What's up, guys? I just want to talk about the Roswell case. I'll just jump into it. Roswell happened 1947, the summer of 1947, July. Pretty much what happened there. Um, Something crashed in, sometime around the date of July 4th, something like that. But something crashed there, um, and it crashed in a farm owned by Mac Brazel. I know it sounds funny, Mac, like like Mac 40, but Mac Brazel. Farmer landed in his field in the desert outside of this town, small town Roswell, New Mexico. Pretty much crashed there over the summer, sometime around July 4th. He wakes up one morning, he's going out to freaking walk his he owns sheep, he's a farmer, so he has a lot of cattle and sheep, so he's taking his animals out to graze. He wakes up in the morning, takes his animals to graze, like at 5 6 a.m in the morning, 7 a.m. Farmers wake up super early for that stuff. He sees that there's broken wreckage, like metallic wreckage, debris strewn over his fields. He's going like, what the heck is this? His animals won't touch it. His animals are walking around the debris. They don't want to go anywhere near it. He has to walk a few more like fields over to actually have his animals eat. The animals wouldn't even want to be close to it. So this happened around July 4th, 1947. What Mac Brazel does, he pretty much is going like, okay, this is obviously like, not normal. There's metallic debris. Maybe it's government. Maybe it's like government, like, planes or like, some sort of weapon, something like that. That's obviously not, what we have, like what civilians have. What he does, like what any good citizen would do, what I would probably do. I wouldn't do it now, probably, but like, actually, I wouldn't do it now. Fuck no. But what he does, he contacts the military base. He says, hey, you know what? Something just crashed right outside. Or he goes like, hey, there's some debris. There's some metallic objects strewn across my fields. Something obviously crashed. Is it yours? He contacted the military, the army at that time. There was a Roswell Army base right there at that time in Roswell. So he calls them up. The army goes investigate. The person who goes investigate, who is sent by the army, his name's Jesse Marcel. I believe he was like he was like an investigator. I don't know his title. I don't want to say like he's a sergeant or something, but he was like, he's an investigator. He's a captain or something. But anyway, they send him over. He looks at the debris. He looks at all that. He's like, okay, this is real. This is obviously something fell here. He makes a few more phone calls, calls his higher ups, calls like his commander, calls like his colonel or whatever. And they're just like, okay, take care of it, take samples. Everyone's trying to figure out, like, what are we going to do here? What is happening here? They need some time. So Jesse Marcel is the point of contact for the military. He's working with Mac Brazel, and they're finding all this debris on his ranch, metallic debris. So let me go into this debris. This stuff is as thin as aluminum. This is 1947. So as thin as aluminum, like the aluminum you'd find like in a cigarette cartridge or whatever, in cigarette case. So it's kind of like that, but it's super durable, super hard. You're not if you try to bend it, try to destroy it, it'll just go back to its original shape. So it's kind of like, whoa, this stuff's pretty fancy. You can't really like break it, can't really bend it. It goes back to its shape. Like, what the heck is this? They're finding all this stuff there, broken, strewn across, like, I believe it was about 1 or 2 miles. Like, it must have been a crazy crash. But they're finding this stuff on his ranch. Um, Also, something that is of a peculiar nature, they're also seeing there's like hieroglyphic, like I beams, like there's like beams. I don't know how big they were, like this big or something, but they have like hieroglyphics on them. Look this up. I'll post a link. Like, there's a really awesome Unsolved Mysteries show episode about this, but they're finding hieroglyphics on these I-beams. And so everyone's going like, okay, like, what is this? Everyone's thinking, like Mac Braves was thinking, if it was 1947 before, like, extraterrestrials or aliens blew up, even using common sense, you're thinking, this is not normal. So I don't know what he was thinking, but the military guy is thinking, like, okay, this is definitely not military. So what the military does at this time, they come up with a game plan. They release, they know people are going to get scared. They don't want to scare the population. They're trying to control the information here. They're trying to control what the public should know, what information must be kept secret, all that stuff. So what they say initially, this is, you can read books on this. I'll post some links here. There's a great book called Roswell Case Closed. It goes into detail about what happened, how the military kind of manipulated the story on this. But pretty much the higher ups came up with the game plan of saying, like, hey, let's release a story just saying it's saucers. It was flying saucers, kind of just um, so here's the game plan. They wanted to say, hey, it was flying saucers or it was a flying saucer that crashed. They released that newspaper because this is 1947. The newspapers only print at night and in the morning. So check it out. So the newspapers are printed twice a day. It's crazy to think about how the way this information is released. It's 1947 newspaper. We don't even have newspapers today, but newspapers are printed in the morning. Let's just say like 4 a.m. for example. I could be wrong, but I think this is how it works. They're printed 4 a.m. and then all the information from that day or something is released into the public. If you get new information and it's given to you later in the day, they can't release it that day because it's all the newspapers have been printed. It's going to be released, I believe, in the evening edition. I could be getting it wrong, but anywho, they figured out a way that they're going to release all the information about the saucer stuff like at night. So then at the evening edition, so then people would just see, oh, look at this headline. Like, oh, saucer found in the desert, like Roswell. Oh, what the heck is this? So they're kind of being kind of truthful, but they kind of were, being deceptive, trying to hide information, control it. So they did that. Initially, they said, hey, flying saucer, you can Google this too, like flying saucer found in the desert, or flying saucer crashed Roswell. And, they released it, but it was for the late night edition. The next day, what they did, they flipped it on its head. They changed it. They said, oh no, it was actually a weather balloon. It was, it was a military project. It was a military exercise, something like that. It was a weather balloon. And then Jesse Marcel is displayed. They have a picture of Jesse Marcel showing the debris of this weather balloon, which he later admitted was not the debris which he found at the actual crash site. So the government lied about that. They spun a story. They try to convince people that it was something else. It wasn't really a saucer. It was, just a weather balloon. Keep this in mind. This was after 1945. It was after World War II. It was just after World War II. So World War II, I know a lot of people don't really know this stuff, the history, because like, no, who cares about history right now? Especially nowadays, no one cares. But like World War II, major epic event, the whole world at war, the whole USA, the whole country, 100% backed the military. They believed everything about the military, what the military said, what the military did. They had the military's backing. The military won the war. They saved the world from Nazi Germany, right? They saved the world from Hitler. So the military had free reign to do whatever they want, so to speak, because the public would back them up. They wouldn't question them. So when the military says, hey, it was just a weather balloon, people are like, hey, you know what? It was a weather balloon. Yeah, face value. Yeah, it was a weather balloon. So that's what they did. And then they spun that story. They try to say, hey, it was a weather balloon. And then kind of just, let the thing fall off the radar, so to speak. Here's the reality of it. Jesse Marcel, the actual officer sent to investigate, the guy that was like the point of contact, later in his life, he admitted that it was a giant lie. That was not the debris that he was shown in that picture. It was not the debris at the crash site that was in that picture. That they took a picture of him at or holding. So he admitted that it was a lie, that it was a cover up. You can Google this too. He says that the material which he actually examined at the crash site totally not normal, not of this world, so to speak. Impossible material that will just bend and go back into shape, hieroglyphics, I-beams, stuff like that. And his son, he brought this material home too. He went to so he investigated the crash site, brought some materials home, showed his family, and then told his family, like, hey, these are aliens. He was just like, this is like not of this world. His son kept some material too. I mean, this is kind of like 1947, like, before the internet, before any way you can like control people. I mean, if you find something, you don't tell anyone about it, you can like keep it. So he kept some of the material hidden in his house. Same with his son. They kept some stuff hidden. Like, they're just like, dude, this is crazy. They just had some stuff in his house. Eventually, the military actually told him, hey, anything you have, give it back. And, they gave it back. And I'm sure the son kept some material. I need to look into that. I'm probably getting it wrong, but I'm sure the son kept some material. And he was just like, I think they gave it back for the most part. But here's the crazy thing. So once that crash happened, the entire town knew about it. Entire town, small town Roswell, things like 10,000 people. Everyone knew about it. They drove to the site. Everyone's taking materials home. Everyone's taking bits and pieces. They're like, dude, this stuff is crazy. Like, there's nothing like this out there. And especially in 1947. Maybe nowadays there is, but back then, no way. We didn't even have plastic back then. So everyone knows about it. They're taking stuff home. But once the military, knows about the importance of this, the significance of this, they're like, they start threatening people. They start telling anyone who has anything, give it back. Don't hold on to it. There's going to be consequences if you don't give the material back. So here's some stuff that everyone should know that, you have to actually pick up a book and read about this stuff. But like, the sheriff of this town was actually threatened by the military, saying like, hey, if you don't work with us, okay, he was threatened in this way. The sheriff was ordered to keep his mouth shut, because the sheriff knew what the military was doing, because he was kind of working with the military, kind of silencing people, telling people to kind of give the materials back. And the actual sheriff was actually scared of the military, of the army. The army, okay, let's put it this way. So the army ordered an official meeting with the sheriff, and the sheriff was so scared of actually, being in that meeting with the army, with the officials, that the sheriff brought his own bodyguards to that meeting. He brought two deputies with him, so in case like, they try to like kill him or like, hurt him, he has his deputies to back him up. But pretty much what the army told the sheriff was just like, hey, you know what, if you tell anyone about this crash, about this material that you're seeing, anything like that, we're going to make you disappear. We're pretty much going to kill you. The military was threatening people with their lives. They were wiretapping phones. They're wiretapping. I forgot what they were using technology at that time, like wiretaps or something. When you send out like it's not an email, but like a teletype. They're wiretapping the teletype. So any information that about this UFO or extraterrestrials, they're making sure they're working with the FBI too. So the FBI was involved with this. The government, they're making sure anything that goes out, they're going to control that information. If someone's trying to release it, they're going to threaten them. say they're going to kill him, say they're going to do this and do that. So the sheriff was threatened. In terms of the military officials themselves, so everyone's wondering, like, hey, you know what? Well, if this really happened, somebody would have talked, right? Somebody would have spoken up. Like some like army people would eventually would have like blabbered at the end of their lives. Check it out. The way the army kind of covered it up and like hid information, how they compartmentalized everything, they pretty much told people only what they needed to know. So let me say, for example, this. They had a photographer show up to the place. The photographer is a military photographer. The military photographer was not told anything. The only thing the military photographer was told was like take pictures of so and so things. That's it. Same thing with truck drivers or pilots, people flying planes to that Roswell base. And then flying the plane, I believe there's another base for I'm slipping my mind, but the pilots were told, nope, just fly the plane here and fly it there. Truck driver, drive it here, drive the truck here, park it here, drive it over there. Same thing with guards. We're not telling you what you're guarding. We're not telling you what's there, what's that. Just stay here, make sure no one gets in, no one gets out. So everything was compartmentalized. In regards to photographers, so you can look this up in the book. Again, the book's going to be called Roswell Case Closed. Photographer says he photographed bodies, but he wasn't told what these bodies were. But, photographer using his common sense was like, these are like aliens. These are not humans. So he says he photographed beings that were like 4 feet tall, that were super small, like humanoids, definitely not humans, that were laid out. So the information's there. So everything's compartmentalized, and that's how the military is able to keep the information shut, and how it kept it secret. So everything's compartmentalized, and then come a few years after the fact, people start writing in their death will, or in their will. There's one guy, I forgot his name, but he says, yeah, it's true, like we saw aliens there. There's like four aliens there. One survived for a bit, and then there's craft there, and then there's like kind of the actual like information network is like breaking open. So I'm trying to figure out like where I'm going with this, but Roswell was real. So there's witnesses there. There's FBI notes, FBI like files there stating like they did so and so, they did this, they did that. You can Google all this. I mean, no one cares, or they don't want to know the truth, but I want to know the truth. But the information for Roswell being true, look at the research. Google, get some books from Amazon. They use books, just buy them. You can like go through the research yourself, and all the signs are going to point at government cover up, people being threatened, people admitting that they saw humanoid aliens. Let's just say they're aliens. People saw aliens. People saw crazy metallic debris that cannot be explained, that could not be created at that time. Now they said now it can be created, but not back then. We didn't even have plastic back then. So, all in all, Roswell was a real phenomenon. My belief, because the truth's so hard to find when people are covering it up, and after time, Roswell's almost like 100 years ago. Crazy. It's 1925, Roswell's 1947, so it's like 80 years ago. So my belief, what really happened there, there was a crash landing. The government covered it up. I believe, per my research, there was, I believe, 3 or 4 aliens in the debris. One survived this is crazy talk, but one survived for a few days, and the government knew all about it. And that's the point. That's the time, that's kind of thing that opened up the whole can of worms of the government knowing that we are not alone in the universe. There's other species. aliens, ETs, what have you out there, that's when they knew that they had to cover it up. People would not, they were fearful that people would not be able to accept the truth, that people would be panicking, scared, civilization would collapse, society would collapse. And it kind of does make sense, because like, even though nowadays people are more accepting of it, I still think people are scared. They don't want to accept the truth. They can't handle the truth, like the movie You Can't Handle the Truth. It's kind of like that, because, if you're religious, it doesn't really mesh with, extraterrestrials being out there or existing. It doesn't mesh with that. Um, it doesn't mesh with just people having this fear that there's a greater civilization, something greater than them. Human beings are not the top of the totem pole. And because if the government admits that there's other beings more powerful, more technologically advanced than us, that can actually, blow us away, like pretty much, if they're that advanced, if their technology is that up there, that they're way beyond us, the government has to admit, yeah, hey, extraterrestrials are real. They're real. They're out there. Um, if they were hostile, if they decide one day, turn hostile against us, there's nothing we can do. Just kiss your sorry but goodbye. If they were to admit that, the state will collapse. People would have like, okay, what's the point of going to work? There's other beings out there. I don't think that way. I'd still go to work. I still do my thing. But like, some people just lose it, especially the religious people and, kind of that spiritual aspect. So they had to cover it up. I think nowadays people are more okay with it. They just be like, hey, you know what? I always knew something was out there. I always knew we weren't like number one. And then there's other research too for other phenomenon on Earth. I don't want to go into like, a tangent here, but Skinwalker Ranch. I know people would be like, what the heck are you smoking? But Skinwalker Ranch, there's crazy phenomenon there. There's like possible like portals, interdimensional things happening. There's USOs, underwater submersible objects, or unidentified underwater submersible objects, something like that. But like, excuse me, there's things out there. So the government's just trying to control this. And in terms of the hearings in Congress, I think you don't really have to pay that much attention. Sure, if you want the smoking gun, if you want them to like release that data saying like, yeah, I have an alien body, or yeah, I have the craft, you can do that. But like, if you look at the evidence, there's lots of cases out there. There's Roswell. There's the Kecksburg event, Pennsylvania. I believe it's Pennsylvania. There's the 1967 nukes over, forgot it, but like, they activated and deactivated nukes in 1967, our nukes. They put in the codes. So there's cases like that. 1982 case with the Russians, they pretty much activated the same thing. They activated the nukes for their nuclear weapons, and then they deactivated it. They're hovering over their bases. So the information's out there. And then there's other cases too, like more recent cases. For example, let's look at 2023, 2 years ago. That was the Alaska UFO, the UFO over Michigan, the UFO over Canada, where they shot the UFO, and then there's no information after that, right? It just went radio silent. They're like, oh yeah, it just crashed in the sea. We don't have it. And then there's that UFO that crashed in the Yukon, like I believe it's Canada, in the wilderness. What happened to that crash retrieval? So obviously the government's hiding some stuff. And then another recent event, Las Vegas alien. It's on there. There's another guy, I forgot his name. I think his name's like Sean Carter, or Sean something like that. But like, he's like an expert video analysis. He works with criminal cases. He works with pretty much with the court system. So he's bona fide in terms of his expertise. But he said, like, look at the video analysis. The original video shot by Angel. That's a kid in Las Vegas who like shot the video, who like called 911 about the aliens in his backyard. He says like, yeah, that video is original, no one touched with it. And there's some entity there cloaking itself in there. I know this sounds crazy as hell. This sounds insane. Even me, I used to believe in this stuff when I was a kid, but then, I thought it was all BS when I turned 13. I used to go to my library and I just read all the books in the paranormal section. But like once I turned 13, I thought it was BS. But like Once I started researching it back again, I believe it was the Nimitz case. I was like, dude, this stuff is real. Especially when I started talking about the Tic Tac UFO, pretty much a propane tank looking thing flying through the thing. I was like, this stuff's real. So anyway, so getting back to the point, the recent cases like Las Vegas alien, the UFOs over the Yukon and Canada, Michigan, stuff like that. So yeah, this stuff. If you don't believe it's not, if you don't believe it's real, that's fine. But look at the evidence. Let the evidence guide you. I follow the evidence. That's my thing. I don't care where the truth lies. I mean, I just go where the evidence goes. And if the evidence is pointing at something like saying that, hey, you know what? There's something that's not of this world, of not of human design in our oceans, flying in our skies. Hey, man, I gotta believe it. I'm not a fool. I'm not, I'm not just gonna believe someone else telling me, hey, it's raining, but you're really like pissing on my leg or whatever that saying goes. Like, no way, dude. Like, I'll be like, you know what? I have my own, I can put two and two together. 2 + 2 = 4. I'll look at the facts and I'll have my own conclusions. So, anyway, this is me just explaining Roswell. Probably did a piss poor job. I'll probably put some more facts or notes in the comment section or in the description. But if you have any questions about this, I can give you more resources. I can answer them. I love this stuff. So yeah, hopefully, this gives you some insight and hopefully it kind of inspires you to kind of just look into the matter. So yeah, write some stuff in the comments, do your thing. If you have any questions, let me know. And yeah, you guys have a good night. And yeah, do your thing. If you look at the sky, I never look at the skies. It's funny. I really don't. I'm I really don't care. I just look straight. I know people say, "Oh, I'm always looking in the sky." I don't do that. I just look, straight or down. You know what I mean? Because hey, we're all looking for, I don't know, like I know I'm looking for money. So, all right, guys, peace.